Welcome to the SmartTechCheck Podcast, hosted by Mark Vina, your home for candid, insightful, and provocative conversations about the smart home automation, security, smartphones, PC and console gaming, and much more.
Hey folks, this is Mark Vina, CEO of SmartTech Research. SmartTech Research is proud to have Aura sponsoring my SmartTechCheck podcast. Aura security software is the all-in-one digital safety net for the whole family. It's literally like having a personal cyber guardian that protects all of the devices in your home on a 24/7 basis. What's more, its AI functionality stands out as it constantly learns and adapts to threats, keeping your family and you safe around the clock. It's a must-have solution for anyone serious about online security. Stay tuned for a special no-obligation promo offer for Aura that will give you cybersecurity peace of mind.
Hi, I'm Anna with SmartTech Research. Whether you're browsing the web, checking emails, monitoring your children's online behavior, spam calls and identity protection, and conducting online transactions, Aura has your back, ensuring a secure and seamless experience every time. Aura's comprehensive security solutions are compatible with Microsoft Windows, Apple Mac OS, Android, iOS, and iPad OS devices. For an exclusive 14-day no-obligation trial version of Aura, use the on-screen QR code or visit the website shown here. Aura is the smart, simple way to stay safe online.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Vina, host of the SmartTechCheck podcast. Today is Friday, March 1st, 2024. Joining me for today's podcast are John Quain, who writes for the New York Times, Smart Cities, and Tom's Guide, Cyril Walpin, who scribes for Popular Mechanics, AARP, Techlicious, Investopedia, and other fine publications, and Rob Peguerero, who writes about tech developments at PC Mag, Fast Company, and other fine publications. Gentlemen, how are all of you today?
Very good.
Good.
I want some energy. Come on, I want the energy.
Hey!
Hey now. Hey now from the Larry Sanders Show, which was a classic, by the way.
Yep. Absolutely.
By the way, the show that I'm watching, I'm just going to say this because I tend to binge watch shows even for a second time. I think, and I didn't appreciate it until it was off the air, but Better Call Saul is one of the finest written shows of all time, because now that I'm watching it a second time, I'm catching things I didn't catch during the first wave. And that Bob Odenkirk, who's not exactly, he's not Hugh Jackman. He's a fine actor. I mean, so, and the ultimate insult is when you call a lawyer friend, you know what? You're like a Saul Goodman. That you remind me of a Saul Goodman. Okay. Anyway, so let's jump right off the bat. Let's get into some of the topics here that I want to chat about. First one we want to get into is what happened at Mobile World Congress. Rob is going to comment on that in a moment. And I'll hand it over to Stuart and John to they weren't there in person. John, I think you didn't go to Mobile World Congress. It was just
not this year. No, I'm afraid not.
Yeah, but a lot of the information was public. The one feature that was a standout, and Qualcomm actually made some news at Mobile World Congress, and I actually did a podcast with them last week remotely about this. They have this new FastConnect 7900 capability, and I don't know, Rob, whether you saw a demo of that, but it really is a remarkable feature. Because they have such a strong connectivity reputation, they now have a silicon that has ultra wideband, Wi-Fi 7, and 5G support, cellular 5G support, that with AI layered on top of it allows the user, when you're in an environment where devices are switching on and off, especially like a home office environment where you may have headphones and you're switching from device to device to device, you may have to change the monitor because you were using a laptop, now you're using a large display. And it purports, and I want to see it when the first first commercial units come to market. But it's a really intelligent use of AI to anticipate how you use your devices in your home. So I don't know whether you got a chance to see that, Rob, in action. But I know
I spent a fair amount of time at Qualcomm's booth, but most of that was looking at other people's applications of AI.
Yeah.
Like I finally got a close-up look at the Humane AI pin.
Oh, yeah.
The CEO of that company was there to show off how it works.
Right.
And for those of you all who have not heard of this thing, it looks like a Star Trek comm badge.
Yes.
It's a little thing you wear. It has a camera on it.
A projector, a little tiny projector.
And so the display it has is your hand. it will project something on it in green light. And so Bethany, the CEO, explained, this thing speaks 50 languages. So here is Japanese, boom, and the kanji characters right in her hand. It was also showing music playback controls where you could then tap the play button on that virtual display.
Awesome.
Like, I don't want to pay $700 and then $24 a month for this thing, but still a neat demo.
Did you get a chance to play with it?
Not myself. I was able to speak some instructions. We established that for transit directions, it doesn't do those. So it's got the usual limits of AI. What can it actually do? Yeah. So technologically interesting, even if not the sort of thing I would recommend any of all y'all run out and buy.
You know what I'm curious about, because and I don't want to get into Vision Pro because that's a completely different podcast, but I did get a Vision Pro the first day it came out. And say what you want about the device, and there's a lot you can discuss about it. Apple did nail the interface, with using eye contact. And I don't know whether you guys have gone into Apple stores yet to kind of play with it yet, but I was kind of dubious around, hey, how could you really use eye gaze and eye contact? You just simply use your index finger and your thumb. You look at an object, like you want to open up iMessages. You look at that icon, you tap your fingers, and it opens up, and it works pretty well. So that's really the question I had for you, Rob, is that I've seen the videos of it, but I'm just curious whether, the usability part, because that's going to be key for a device like that to work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seemed pretty straight. You're speaking to it as if it were, I can't say, hey, Siri, or everyone's phone's going to light up. Simple voice-driven interface with, I guess there is the issue that a voice-driven interface is a command line interface, and that it's not obvious up front what the heck the thing can do.
Right. But I think it's great. I think that is the closest yet. No one is going to wear those goggles either in their living room or walking around or in the car, right? But the little thing on your lapel, now you've got something. Now, it's too bad it uses AI. If it didn't use AI, it would probably be more accurate. Just go for the voice commands. That's what Alexa taught us all. We didn't need that. But I was dying to see that. That's the one thing I missed by not going, actually, Rob, is when I saw that.
Well, you also missed a lot of really good ham. I mean, let's be real here.
Rob, was there anything else that kind of jumped at you in terms of big news?
The big theme, obviously, AI was in everybody's press release and presentation. And, it's like replace the letters AI with software and see if it actually makes a functional difference. What I was interested in was there's so much happening with satellite connectivity and to phones, and not just SpaceX's Starlink venture with T-Mobile. AT&T, they have big ambitions for this partnership with a company called AST Space Mobile, which is due to launch its first 5 satellites first half of this year. And what they aim to do is not just what Apple does, which is emergency messaging only to the 2 most recent series of iPhones, and not what T-Mobile is doing, which is going to be messaging and voice, not really data. AST wants to do full spectrum, pardon the pun, service from a satellite. So voice, data, actual broadband. They've demoed it. And it's an interesting proposition, not least because their satellite constellation at build out, it will be only 90. There are over 5,000 Starlink satellites out there, which is a crazy high number. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how AT&T can make that happen. There's a company called Link Global, spelled with a Y and a K. It's actually based not far from here in Falls Church, Virginia. They've been providing satellite connectivity to smaller carriers and other markets, where right now it's just voice and messaging, but data soon. So there's stuff happening, and it's not just from the companies that we've heard of and a certain tech billionaire with no inner monologue on social media we've heard so much about. And it seems like there's real potential.
You had to get that in. You could
gotta get that dig in. Yep.
Yeah.
Don't get my bonus unless I do it every opportunity.
I know.
So yeah, there's interesting things going on that promise to fill in a lot of the places that have stayed blank in coverage maps, and which otherwise will stay blank forever because at a certain point it's just not financially viable to put a cell tower in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Well, the one thing interesting about the T-Mobile though and the Starlink is it doesn't work on Starlink as it stands right now. So they need new satellites. And
Yeah, they launched the
so
first set of direct-to-cell satellites just
right. So it's only 3, I think they have aloft now,
Yeah.
3 satellites aloft. But the cool thing to me about the T-Mobile is it works with all the phones that are on the planet right now.
Right.
Which none of the others do, right? It works.
So Lynx, their whole thing is this is any 3GPP phone. So basically, as long as it's been built in the last decade, I guess, it's their whole pitch is we connect everyone's phones. AST, they're going to launch service on I think 850 megahertz on that band, which should cover pretty much every phone that's on AT&T's network. So yeah, it's T-Mobile. That's a specific band they already have in newer phones,
right?
And Apple has got the most constrained service,
right? Because they're only the latest phones and only Global Star. But yeah, it's interesting how once T-Mobile did that, everybody's like, wait a second, I better do something about this. So it's going to be, I'm sitting here in the country. You could tell. There is no cell service here. The power went out just the other day. The whole area completely devoid of electricity. So no
off the grid. John was off the grid.
Completely off the grid. So the only help would be that satellite, if I still had power on my phone, would still work. So I think it's going to be a big, big deal. Really big deal.
Yep.
Before we hit the next topic, I just want to let Stuart, did you see anything online from a Mobile World Congress standpoint?
Well, we were talking about the Qualcomm FastConnect 7900, and I think a couple of things. First, Apple has been working on a similar multi-radio chip, either with or without Broadcom. I don't remember, but they've been working on it for about a year. So I'm suspecting that we're probably going to see something from Apple along the same Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, UWB. You have to remember that Apple is one of the very few phone makers, other than Samsung and Google, who are actually deploying UWB primarily for the AirTags.
Right.
But I think UWB is going to be the big breakthrough technology on this as soon as it gets out to enough phones, because sort of like what NFC did for wireless payment, UWB is going to do for locks. I mean, that's what I think, and as well as autonomous vehicles, but more immediate locks. The fact that it is a much more robust wireless technology for wireless unlocking car doors and hotel rooms and your own front door. I think that will be one of the true disruptive technologies in 2025, and will spur a lot more phone makers to install UWB capabilities in their phones, because I think a lot of people will want to be able to do that kind of wireless.
No. I think you're right, Stuart, because the location precision of UWB is we're talking about inches,
and it's more secure than NFC or Bluetooth. It's not as prone to interference. So it's a perfect technology for secure wireless entry in a way that NFC and Bluetooth are not.
Well, we got to go to the next topic, but the only thing I will say that Apple's track record with connectivity vis-a-vis modems has not been good. So they may be doing business with Qualcomm a lot longer than they would like, but that's a different conversation. This will be a fun topic to talk about. SCOTUS is going to hear this important social media case. I'm going to let John kind of frame this one, because I'm sure that it's close to his heart, but everyone's anticipating, is the court going to look for kind of a very narrow way of applying the law? I don't, and you can never tell by it's fascinating to me when you listen to the audio sessions of the SCOTUS hearings, because sometimes you think I can read the tea leaves based on the questions you get. Often that doesn't happen, So, John, I'll let you kind of kick this one off.
I mean, it's just really about the Texas and Florida laws that were, there's no nice way to put this. They're politically motivated, right? It comes down to Donald Trump gets kicked off of a social platform because he yelled fire in a theater, right? If you drink this would be good for you, it'll kill you. And if you don't do this, so people were dying, said, can't talk about it, you can't do that, can't have misinformation online. And so according to these private companies, Twitter was one of them before Elon Musk, said, hey, that violates our rules. You can't do stuff like that on JQ can't do it. Rob can't do it. Mark can't do it. Neither can Donald Trump. So off he went. Eventually, it took a while. The state legislatures in those places said, oh, no, we're going to have a law that says you can't kick people off for their viewpoints, and they've used different terminology, which is also really vague, which really makes this even more of a mess. What's a viewpoint? Can you yell fire on Twitter? I don't know. According to Texas and Florida, they want you to be able to. So, but they want to argue it's a First Amendment case. Well, if it is sort of like some of these cases like newspapers and telcos, then the states can't enact any laws that have anything to do with it. So they would just be thrown out just automatically. But if it's more like, what was the other analogy? A shopping mall where you can't deny somebody to open a store in there based on that, then maybe a state can enact this legislation. So it's a real hot mess because there's no precedent.
I've never quite understood that analogy. I've heard it before.
Right.
And the reason why I struggle with it is that I can assure you the Westfield Valley Mall across the street from me, if they wanted to open up a strip joint in the mall, I suspect that the proprietor would find ways to say, no, we really don't want that business.
That's true too. I mean, so there are so many things going on. And obviously, I think at least I find myself being biased in this because I feel like I'm constrained being in a newspaper or magazine or a news site by certain laws and regulations that I have to abide by. And so it feels to me like, yeah, I think Twitter and Facebook qualify as should be abiding by certain regulations, in which case they would kick Trump off anyway, because we're not allowed to print things we know are false, right? And we'll get sued and all sorts of terrible things will happen. So it's going to be a wild, interesting case. And just to finish up what I was going to say, the comments from the Supremes during the initial arguments were not funny. They were just struggling to understand what this was about. And all of them had a lot of trouble with it. Not least of it's not just the technology, but also there's no precedent. And how should we regard Twitter and Facebook and these? And is Yelp going to qualify? If I put a bad review in Yelp, is that going to be protected by these laws or not? And it's a mess. It's a mess.
So, Rob, as a person who's argued many cases in front of the Supreme Court, and I don't think you've been successful with one. So you're
betting zero, in fact.
You're betting zero. You're like 0 for 35. You're the Washington Senators.
It's gonna end sometime,
What's your perspective on this?
This should be an easy call for the Supreme Court. The First Amendment protects your right to speak. It also protects my right not to reproduce your speech.
Right.
There's no argument about this. And what these laws are about, the Texas one in particular, is so crazy broad. It says use platforms with more than 50 million monthly average users may not censor a user's expression or a user's ability to receive the expression of another person based on the viewpoint of the user or another person, which, to boil it down, means you can't kick off Nazis. You can't kick off terrorist propaganda. You can't kick off Hamas. And I'm not surprised Texas Republicans passed this bill, having seen what other things they like these days. But it's crazy, it's stupid, and under no circumstance, it's facebook.com, not .gov. It's not censorship when some company decides they don't want to use some of their server to carry speech that they find distasteful or loathsome. And you just can't have government saying, no, you must carry this.
Right.
So it should be an easy call, especially since this is the same Supreme Court that said you can't compel a baker to, put a particular message on a cake. How are they then going to say, oh, but it's a social media company, not a bakery. So forget everything we said before. So yeah, I expect a maybe not a 9-0 decision.
So your position is the mean old Republicans. Let me just net it out for you.
Well, they're trying to bring back what Democrats used to like as the fairness doctrine, and we got rid of that. That was not a good idea either. So yeah, no, it's the constitutional conservative position is you don't make private companies publish certain things.
Right.
You don't compel them to host speech that they think is just awful.
So, Stuart, you have the last voice. I know you took a break there. Thank you for checking back in.
Yeah, sorry. All of a sudden my speakers went out. I couldn't hear anything.
Technology.
So I don't know if this has been covered, but what I found interesting about all of this was the fact that a lot of the people, the proponents of instituting some sort of ruling of this sort in Texas and Florida, want social media to be reclassified as a utility, as a public utility, which makes me laugh because the conservative point of view was to be against making the internet, which is the carrier of these networks, a public utility or a common carrier. So it's just very funny that they want to apply the common carrier to the content, but not to the actual medium that's carrying the content.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
No, I'm reluctant to say this, but I do agree with 90% of what each of you have outlined. I can't round up to 100%.
Much better than average for us.
Because what's going to happen here, and I see this whole thing playing out the same way with AI, by the way, is that because companies have not been able to, many of the social media companies have, first of all, they've done a poor job just of the PR perception of this. Some of the appearances, listen, I don't know to tell you guys, every time I see Mark Zuckerberg appear before Congress, I say to myself, where's his PR person? And maybe he's just out of control and he just doesn't know how to, but it's always a bad look. And I just think that when companies can't police themselves, they open themselves up to Washington stepping in. I think the same thing's going to happen with AI. And when Washington steps in, it's a shit show, and so we'll see what happens. But it's going to be entertaining to see the way they rule, and hopefully, Rob, you'll have more success with this last case that you
presented. Sooner or later, it's got to come around.
This is a fun one. I have a very strong opinion about this. Apple says adios to its car project. We just lost Stuart again, but hopefully he'll come back. Let me just say what bothers me about things like this is that, and I am not in the back pocket of Apple. Apple has never paid me a dime for anything I've said about them. But here's a company that has spent probably, I'm sure it's a big number. It's got to be in the billions of dollar range on this Apple car project they've been working on for years. And you got to give them a little bit of credit because they feel that I'm sure there's a feeling within Apple now that they've gotten Vision Pro out the door. They can't boil the ocean. As much as the Apple, an Apple car might be interesting, can they accomplish 70%, 80% of what they would like to do with a sellable Apple car with new iterations of Apple CarPlay, which are already out the door, and the new versions of CarPlay have much more expansive control within the cockpit of the car. And as a lot of the car makers have been laughing for years, saying Apple's going to get into the car business. They don't even know what the hell they're going to they're getting themselves into between unions, the supply chain. Let me put it this way. If they didn't get into the TV business, which was years ago, the rumor, the car business is not exactly, another business that would come off the tip of the tongue saying, hey, let's jump into that. And the final thing I'll say is that Apple, I think, there's many, many learnings, especially on the AI side. I am sure they've been able to accrue. They'll be able to apply to other product categories. So it's not like it's work that's going to go out. It's going to go out the window. But a lot of the media is kind of seizing on this. Oh, this is a Tim Cook failure. What a disaster. I was reading a story this morning that apparently there's some scuttlebutt within Apple. People didn't want apparently. A number of people were happy that they blew up the car project. because there was some turf wars going on
Right.
for whatever reason. Well, what a surprise! Big companies having turf wars. So to me, this is more kind of more of a who cares real type of thing. But let me start with John. John, because you're the car guy. What's your take?
Oh, well, I don't think it's a who cares thing too. I think they had an opportunity in TVs too. It's interesting that you mentioned that. There was a really good opportunity, and now we see this explosion of Roku TVs, right? That could have been an Apple TV, but the margins are pretty slim. Apple doesn't like to play in any waters where the margins are really slim. They
Right.
command huge price premiums for their phones. Come on.
Yeah.
And for their services. So they're just not going to play in that. But I think what's really actually telling about this is it's sort of what's wrong with AI. So they went into this project thinking that they were going to use a form of AI, not the large language models form of AI, but the sort of original training AI of machine learning AI, and thought that they could, like everybody else, come out with an autonomous vehicle based on that. Well, of course you can't, right? And which all these companies are now learning the hard way, that AI isn't going to do it for them. You can build an autonomous car. You can make it drive down the road and not hit anything. Absolutely can do that. Been in more than 20 of those cars, but you can't do it in the way that some people would like it to happen. And that was really the problem with that project right from the start. And then this switching back and forth reportedly to doing an EV. Well, everybody's building EVs. There's no particular skill set. You can hire as many people as you want, but building a car is a really different thing from anything that Apple does.
Right.
And so that was just gone. But I think it is a lesson. You've seen some AI-based projects, automotive projects fail and go under in the last year. And this is really one of them. I don't think it was about turf wars. It wasn't about that. It's about the basic technology. You can't get there from here. And then they finally realized it and pulled the plug on it. They could have gone and done more research and gone more rules-based. They could have done what Waymo and Google and others are doing. That is a very successful project. Waymo cars are rocking and rolling. They're autonomous vehicles. But Google's been at it, and they're spending even more money. So not such a surprise, really.
Stuart, before we lose you again, what are your thoughts on Apple bailing?
Well, a lot of the people at Apple, from what I've been able to read, have likened it to Titanic. I'm not sure if anybody's brought that up since I was not here.
Yeah,
A
little melodramatic, but you're right.
Yeah, the other side of it apparently is, from what I have read, is that they may not have been close to getting to a car, but apparently the AI technology that they developed was very, very robust, and apparently they've moved a whole bunch of those engineers onto their AI project, which had been sort of, everybody in the media is complaining, where's Apple and AI? Well, apparently a lot of these, if not most of the engineers that were on the car project, are now being moved to this AI project that has sort of not really been in the public eye of late, which now may take, and Apple may play a bigger role in this now that they've shut down the car thing. It may have been very well that they decided that they would better put the resources to AI than to the car. So it may not have been a closing down, lose $10 billion, but simply shift all of those resources whole hog into an AI project, which we may see the results of come WWDC in June.
No, I think that's the right observation. Apple has, iOS 18, iPad OS 18 has to have a strong AI component to it. And now whether they call it AI, we could argue that all day long, but they can't show up, empty-handed at the dance. And, WWDC is only 6 months away, 5 months away. So it's not, hey, this is what companies do. They shift resources from one bucket to the other. And I really think they have to have a compelling story in June. And I think that's part of it. But I also think it's also part of the fact is that from a return standpoint, and for all the reasons that John outlined, is it really worth it? Are they really going to, what are they really giving up when you think about it beyond a lot of headaches and the supply chain issues and everything that goes along with that? Right. Rob, I'll let you have the final word on this.
Yeah, I never understood why Apple was doing this, what sort of value they thought they would add. I mean, we look at the electric car market these days. The number one complaint is they cost too much. Well, Apple is not going to solve that problem. It's not going to happen. And so it really spoke to me of a certain level of corporate hubris to think that they were going to, show the car industry how it's done. And so, yeah, I'm glad that Apple sort of cut its losses and is, assigning that, putting its efforts in other directions.
Well, I can I add one little perspective
Sure.
too on this, because I'm thinking back a little bit. So remember though, just a few years ago, and I was one of those people, by 2021, we were going to have autonomous vehicles available to consumers to buy and have on the road. That was the vision, right? And Sony is another company that's still in this game, playing it with Honda. And the vision
What
is,
a horrible name
you've
that
got
is.
screens all around in your car's driving itself. And now I'm watching those screens and playing games and doing whatever. That's the vision that Apple saw too. And they sort of thought, they bought into it as well. Oh, got to be in the car then, because it's going to be about entertainment and the experience. And here we are at 2024. And I don't see my autonomous vehicle anywhere, right? So I think the writing was on the wall. I was like, this is going to be a much longer game, and too much for them.
Right. And I also think, just to close on this, is that Vision Pro is going to be a big, or that whole category is a big heavy lift. And, I think what Apple does a pretty good job of is whether you agree with what they decide on to focus on or not, they don't make, when they make bets, they make 2 or 3 bets. They don't make 25 bets. And I think and by the way, Vision Pro is a long-term deal. We've talked about that before on the podcast, that's not, regardless of how Vision Pro performs, this is a multi-year commitment to make that category happen. Last topic. This is one, Stuart, I know you feel passionate about. Netflix is considering to raise rates again. That's the rumor. Even though streaming, you look at the data, that category, streaming subscriber growth, is slowing down. What intrigues me about this, but what Netflix has done recently, is that they've brought to life a number of really legacy mediocre TV series, whether it was Suits or whether I think the latest one now is Loudermilk, which I actually watched a few episodes of that. Who's the actor that's in? I really like him. He's a good actor. And anyway, he was in Office Space. He played the lead in Office Space. But
Livingston,
Ron Livingston. I think he's a good actor. But besides that, they've taken these TV shows that during their original broadcast run were not highly viewed, and they've kind of turned into sensations. So, which, by the way, is a very inexpensive deal. I mean, we've talked before about the podcast about creating this original content like you're a studio. That's a very expensive endeavor, and the fact that they could take a lot of these series that are, that have been off the air for a few years. So you're going to correct me. Didn't they bring Lost in Space back, the original TV series? I think you can watch Lost in Space now, which that show drives me crazy for a whole bunch of different reasons. But regardless, what's your take on where Netflix is? They have made that pivot, from a kind of a commercial. It used to be a commercial free only model to much more now a subscriber model with a lower cost. You got to watch ads, and that's actually turned out to be successful for them. But what's your take? Sorry,
are you asking me, Mark?
Yeah. What's your take on?
Okay. I have 2 takes on this. The first take is that this is still an industry in a great deal of growth flux. I don't think any of these people figured out after the first surge of users how they were going to build a sustainable model, because a lot of these, all of these sites, all of these streaming services rely on creating bold new content. And when your subscriber, and that's all reliant on how many new subscribers you're going to attract to the platform when you put on these bold new programming. Well, eventually those economics are not going to line up. You can't keep coming out with multi-million-dollar productions when you're only seeing a fractional raise in the number of subscribers. So of course, they're all looking at doing certain things. One, they're they're going to raise rates. 2, they're going to add an advertising tier to support the creation of that new content. And 3, they're all going to try to merge together. There have been all these rumors lately of Warner, Discovery, and Paramount getting together, and that's been sort of put on the back burner for the moment. But you have the Disney, Hulu, ESPN bundle. So I think that Netflix raising the rates, it's just a natural flow of things, especially after the writer's strike, where they're now paying out even more than they might have before. Right. But the one thing, when they said that they were going to raise rates, I almost didn't mind, because 1 month of Netflix is essentially, in New York at least, the price of 1 movie ticket. And yet I'm able to watch all of this great content on Netflix that equals 10 movies or so. So I don't mind necessarily the jump in price, because I feel that the amount of content I'm getting is worth the money that I am paying for it, given how much it just costs to go to the movies.
Yes. John?
Well, I mean, I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum here. I mean, we have to have a lot of these because we review all this stuff, and we have to examine it and criticize it. But I'm close to dropping Netflix for the first time since they were sending out DVDs in the mail.
Wow.
Just because the quality of the things they have isn't really up to snuff anymore. And a lot of people with Max out there and Disney Plus have some critical entertainment components, as it were. YouTube TV is coming on strong. I'm seeing a lot of people drop the cable box and go to YouTube TV, which you can use anywhere you like, as many times as you like. And you don't get these messages saying, well, where are you now? Is this really you? And trying to kick you off the service like Netflix constantly does. When I'm going back and forth to the country and home, I get it all the time. YouTube TV is great and records everything. So there are a lot of other options now. And the idea that they're going to raise rates again, it might actually push me off Netflix for the first time since they started.
Now, Rob, just to close us out on this topic, because we're only got a couple of minutes left here. I know you were recently on trial by Netflix for too many password sharing. So you were actually...
Netflix is the streaming service we've had the longest, and it's definitely the one we haven't really thought about. Like Sling TV, I've paused the service repeatedly to see, can we get by without it? And it appears we can. So then maybe that's $40 I don't need in my entertainment expenses every month. So yeah, Netflix, it's, I am sort of getting used to it, sort of the same way Amazon finds a way to increase the cost of Prime, or as they call it, the Amazon citizenship tax every year or so. It's a fact of life. It does seem that Netflix is continuing to invest in content, put more stuff there. I don't, when I open the app, I'm never thinking, oh, there's nothing to watch. What am I going to do?
Well, I mean, we got to close it here because we're over time. But the only thing I would say is that the world has changed so much in 10 years. You had Netflix. I think you had Hulu about 8 or 9 years ago. The space is so crowded. And even if these services are not raising their prices, people have to make choices, and I do agree with Stuart and John in that unless the content's compelling, not just reruns of Gilligan's Island, which,
or Friends.
Or Friends. Oh, please don't get me
Friends, really. Come on.
But the reality is that they're in a conundrum right now because to Stuart's point, the rates are slowing. These productions are, they don't get immunity from the high cost of producing original content, which is why, taking these shows that have been off the air for 5 years or 3 years and bring them on. Hey, they love that because the cost to deliver that content is actually very low. But it's going to be interesting to see what this sorts out, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again about it. Guys, thanks for taking the time to join me for today's podcast. For our viewing and listening audience, thanks for making the Smart Tech Check podcast part of your day or commute. Please make sure that you hit these like and subscribe buttons. Let me actually bring those up. It would be nice for people to see them. There you go. Make sure that you like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast, or use these QR codes to connect with me. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Mark V, the Tech Guy. And until next time, have a great week, guys.